Hello, good day. In this session, we will be creating a dynamic website. We will be looking at how to establish a connection with our MySQL server. We'll also be looking at how to query the database from our web interface. We'll also look at how to add a login screen to our system, as well as how to manipulate our database in other ways from our web interface. First of all, we're going to look at how to configure and how to set up our database. But before you do that, please ensure that you have the necessary software installed. One of them you need is XAMPP. So ensure that you have XAMPP installed and ensure that you have your web server running, which is Apache, and your database server, which is MySQL. Once you have those running, the next thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating the database that we're going to be using for this project. So we're going to create a database. In this case, we are creating a database called hotel. All right, so we enter create database hotel. When we run it, we should see our green tick coming up to show that it has been created. And then we create hotel here. Then we use hotel. All right, so we are selecting the hotel database. The next thing we're going to do is to create the department table. All right, so the department table comprises of department ID, department name, and location. Following that, we are going to create an employee table. Inside this table, we have the employee ID, first name, last name, gender, country, salary, and their department ID. All right, in this case, the primary key for this table is the employee ID. So we have specified that. And we also have a foreign key, which is the department ID. So the department ID is coming from the department table. And of course, if you notice, the department ID is the primary key in the department table. And so since it's just used to link the employee table with the department table, it is referred to as a foreign key in the employees table, and that we specify. Having done that, we'll just click here and we're going to execute our query to create our employee table. All right. And just to have some data to work with, we are going to just do some insertion. So here we're inserting into the department table. The column headings are department ID, department name, location. And our values are as listed here. All right, so we're just gonna execute this so that we can have some data to work with. All right, similarly, we're gonna be inserting some data into our employee table. All right, so we're inserting these values. And of course, I could have specified the headings for the employee table. So we have employee ID, first name. So let me just specify those before I actually put in the values. All right, so I'm going to say insert into employee. I'm going to just put in the headings. We have EMP ID, F name, L name, gender. The truth is it will work whether or not we put these in there once we have them in the correct order. Gender, country, salary, and we have department ID. So these are the headings that we are working with, and we would have specified the values. So you'd have done this previously. All right, so I'm just gonna run this. All right, so something is out. So it says column count doesn't match. So let's just make sure that we have the necessary columns. So we have the employee ID, the first name, the last name, the gender, the country, the salary, the department ID. Just make sure, okay, this one is missing something. All right, so this one is missing a last name. All right, let's put Peter King. All right, so now let me just bring this down so you can see it a little clearer. All right, so you can just run this now, and there it is. So you're good to go. So we have our two tables set up. That's our department table and our employee table. All right, so we're going to be developing a system using this database. So we're going to look at how we can access the information from this database and display the data into a web page and so forth and so on. All right. Now, the last thing we're going to do in this first video is to look at how to establish the connection with our database. And to do this, we're going to be using PHP. All right. So first of all, we're going to test to see if our web server is working. And if our web server is working, so look here. So here is our web server. There's an Apache web server. The web server is working and we enter localhost here. We should be seeing the dashboard for the XAMPP server coming up. All right, so once that is working, we know that our web server is working and so we can proceed with what we have to do. All right, so now we are going to look at how to establish a connection between MySQL and our web interface. All right, so let's look at the connection. So to do this, we're going to open up Notepad or any text editor that you want to use. You could use Notepad++. And inside here, we're going to enter the PHP script. All right. And I should also mention that you need to know the username that you would use to access your MySQL server. Most persons have root as their default username, and some persons will have root as their password. Some persons may not have a password, like in my case. All right. And you also need to know the name of your database. I'm going to create 3 constants. So I'm going to define a constant for the database. And this is PHP way of defining constants. My database name is hotel. All right. And the next constant I'm going to define is user. So all this is saying is that the user is equal to what comes here, which is root in my case. We're also going to define a password. And this is what you would have entered to connect to your MySQL database. I don't have a password, so I'm going to just put 2 empty quotation. And then now we will have the connection script. So the connection will be stored. My connection is going to be stored in a PHP variable called connection. All right, so the variable name could be anything. And I'm going to use the method MySQL I_connect. All right, so this is used to establish a connection with your database. And here we're going to specify where the database is located. So mine is localhost. That means it's located on a machine. If you're using a database located somewhere else, probably on a server outside of your home or outside of your office, you would actually specify the path here. Following the path to the database, I'm going to specify here. I'm going to specify the username and the password. All right. So the username is stored in the constant user. So I'm going to put that here. User followed by password. All right. Then we have the database name, which is hotel in our case. Now we're not going to type hotel, we're going to put database, as database is actually storing hotel. All right. So we So this will allow the connection to be made. However, if the connection fails, I'm gonna put R die, and what comes R after R die is the error message that will be outputted in case there's a fail. All right, so you can see error connecting to MySQL server. All right, so that's it for the connection. All right, so let's close the PHP tag here. And what we're going to do now, very important that we pay attention to this one, is that we are now going to save this, and this has to be saved as a PHP file in the root folder of the web server. So I'm going to navigate to the htdocs folder in your XAMPP folder. So I'm going to just go to save as. All right. So my XAMPP folder is on a C drive. More than likely yours is XAMPP. So you go to XAMPP and you're going to look for htdocs. And inside here, you can create a folder. All right, let me just point out to you that for mine, if you look at when you open XAMPP here, if you scroll down where it says installation directory, it will actually point you to the directory that you're actually running. My directory is XAMPP 13. So I want to use XAMPP 13. So it still is C drive, but yours may be XAMPP. More than likely yours will be XAMPP. All right, so mine is 13. So inside here, I'm going to go to the htdocs folder. And I'm going to create a folder called hotel. And everything that we are going to be doing for this project, we're going to be saving them inside here. So the file that I'm going to save is going to be called connect.php. Notice I'm typing it in double quotes, right? So you can just switch this to all files, enter connect.php, and that will save the file for you as a PHP file. All right. All right, so remember PHP stands for Hypertext Preprocessor, and it's a server-side script. All right. So let's test this to see if it actually works. So it's connect.php. Now, nothing should actually come up on the screen when we access this page. So we're gonna try to access this page. Remember, it's located in hotel. So we're gonna go back to localhost, switch from dashboard to hotel. When you go to hotel, you should notice now that you have access to a connect.php file. When you click on it, you should see a blank screen like this. Once you see a blank screen like this, it means that it's actually working. All right. So stay tuned, and in our next video, we are going to look at how to access the content of our database and display the result on a web page. So thank you.